Hello, everyone, and welcome to an episode of Pints and Quarts presented by Craft Beer Nation. We are here tonight with a double threat guest. We've got Augie Carton, who is part owner and of Carton Brewing in New Jersey, and he is also one of the hosts of the podcast Steal This Beer. So we're very excited to have him with us tonight. We're going to get to that conversation in just a minute. You ought to find us on social media. We are on Twitter. We are on Facebook. We are on Google+, where it all started. We're on Instagram. Look for Craft Beer Nation. You're probably going to find us. Interact with our videos. We post a lot of stuff to YouTube, reviews, and that kind of thing. So do that while you're listening to theme music and get a beer into a glass, sit back, and relax. Here we go. All right, we are back, and our guest tonight, as I had mentioned in the intro, is Augie Carton. Before we get to him, I'm Matt Miller. I have been on hiatus for a while, back tonight for a special appearance because I love this beer, and I've got some of this in my glass here. I got Gil Mello. Gil, hello.
Hello there. How are you doing?
All right, all right. And now let's get right to our guest. Augie, thank you for joining us this evening here. How are you?
I'm well. Hello.
Well,
Thanks
good.
for having me.
Yes, we are live on YouTube right now, and you might be listening to us on a podcast that we post to Stitcher, iTunes, and all those kind of places. So we are talking about Carton Brewing, and we usually start in the beginning, where did you homebrew, all this kind of stuff. But I've got some interesting information that you started your career in, you had a previous career in filmmaking. So how do you go from filmmaking to beer making? I mean, they're both creative adventures, but give us a little bit of your background.
I'm a person who has a very strange attention span, for lack of a better word. I dropped out of college when I was 20 because I started late. I framed houses for a couple years. Then I worked for Victoria's Secret catalogs selling underwear. Then I went into the film business. I left the film business and started working on Wall Street. And I opened Carton Brewing concurrent with that. And, another 5 years later, and now I started that podcast because if there's an hour in my day, I need to destroy it with some kind of new thing to occupy time. And, through the whole time, my first job when I was 13, I opened oysters at a shack in Asbury Park. And I've always been a cook, waiter, bartender, and when you come by the brewery, you'll find me hiding behind the bar, not out on the other side. I like that part of the world probably most of all. So
yeah, but you don't seem to be too shy in our conversations here, though. So is it just you have to be in your element, you have to be in the right mood, you have to be lubricated with hops and barley?
It's no, I'm definitely a talker no matter what. I don't know why. I like the conversation. My favorite conversations are about flavor, good, bad, indifferent, what they are, and for my whole life, I've found ways to put myself in those conversations. I wrote a food blog back in 2005, and then the New York Times and New York Magazine said some nice things about it and kind of ruined its anonymity, so I put it to bed, and then Carton Brewing follows soon after that.
So take us through so Carton Brewing is a venture with you and your cousin, and also a Carton?
Yeah, he is Chris Carton. Chris and I our fathers were brothers. My father is Chris's father's older brother. And we grew up down a 2.5-mile dead-end road in a place called the Hartshorn Woods in Middletown, New Jersey. 2.5 miles, we might have been 2 of the 4 kids on that road. So we have been... he's about 6 months older than me. He has a little brother that's about 8 months younger than me. We grew up as brothers. We grew up across the street from each other and very close. We've kind of always been in close contact. We got older when we had our own kids. We both moved home to that same road to raise our kids. And we were hanging out drinking beer. And at the time, this is probably 2008, 9, 10, we were very happy to get a new sixtel and throw it on Chris's kegerator and drink through it over a weekend, just like when we were kids and we rode bikes together. That's what we did as grown-ups. we were very frustrated that it was very easy to get a Dogfish Head out of Delaware, some Trogs out of Pennsylvania, some, Brooklyn or Six Point out of New York. And it was damn near impossible to get a Jersey beer. So that kind of started me on, well, I'm going to start making beer. Chris is a lawyer. Said, Chris, find out why there's no breweries in New Jersey, because there weren't at the time. When we opened in 2011, I think we were like the 12th or 13th brewery. Chris came back and said, I can't see any reason why you can't open a brewery. So, I said, all right, write a business plan. I'll go figure out some recipes. At the time, I was, my wife's best friend's husband was home brewing, and we were making, we were talking about beers every time he came down. So I had the need for a beer called Boat, because I commute by boat, and I hated that they only had, American light lagers on the boat. But there was a sense to that because you ride the boat for 40 minutes. So if you have a pint of a 4.2 beer, you can still get in your car at the other end of that boat and drive home. Even at 6%, like if I could get them to put Sierra on the boat, you have 2 beers in that 40 minutes, you shouldn't be driving your car home. So we set about solving how to make a 4.2 beer taste like, I think the beer I was probably drinking most of the time was Ithaca's Flower Power.
From Ithaca Brewing?
I'm sorry, from Ithaca, yep.
Yeah.
Flower Power, back when Chief was there. And beers like that, Dogfish 60, Dogfish 90, Trogs Nugget, those are the beers I was, if we got them in a sixtel, we'd drink them way too fast. Like, Chris's house is only, I don't know, quarter mile from my house. And there were nights I walked home because we drank so much of a Flower Power sixtel that I didn't think I could drive the quarter mile in good shape. And that's what Boat is. That's what Boat is. How do you take advantage of the parts of a double IPA that can work small? Like, how do you find that bitterness and those aromatics and just, those layers while still making a beer you can pound in a 40-minute boat ride and not be in a bad way.
So how did you find that balance? Late additions? I mean, dry
we put around a bunch of ways. There's a bunch of weird things about Boat. 5 years ago, session IPA wasn't a thing, so you had to kind of figure it out on your own. We knew we wanted to have ale character. We thought if a lager would be too clean and the hops would have nothing to lay on top of. But we knew we wanted it to be crisp and fast so that, part of a wonderful 8-12 beer session is crispness and dryness, right? So we went with a Kolsch's. We don't worry about filtering it, which now obviously Boat's nowhere near as cloudy as the world has let things get. But back then, this would have been considered an ugly beer. We said we don't care about that. That doesn't bother us. The fact that Kolsch doesn't flock well, I believe, adds a wrinkle to the bitterness. So you've got the bitterness of hop in suspension. I'm sorry, of yeast in suspension, which, because, if you just do too many hops, then it's just like that hop astringent bitterness. And we wanted real bitterness, right? We weren't just doing all late edition aroma. We wanted it to at least be like a good big double, so that level of bitterness. And then I believe, I haven't proven this anywhere, but I believe that the Kolsch yeast in suspension gives the lupulin, the cohumulones, and all the oils a thing to attach to. So it keeps the aroma spread longer and better. So those decisions, we don't fool around with the water. I don't know how well you know Jersey, but Jersey basically has 3 bands of water. There's the northern kind of slate water table, which is some of the greatest water in the world. That's actually why Budweiser's in Newark and why, Ballantine and all those places were there. Then down here we have our bedrock, our part of Jersey is much more a sandstone, an Irish sandstone, and we're very close to the water. So there's kind of a salty, kind of irony quality to our water. And then as you move south, you go into the Pine Barrens, and you basically have kind of a dead detritus water table. So so there's basically 3 swaths of water in New Jersey. And for a lot of beers, we fiddle around with water, obviously, as you will, salt, brewing salts, and so on. But boat, we just left it right like it was, which is what I think one of the things that makes boat so special and so unique, but also one of the things that means we're always going to have to make boat down here. And there's a lot of my beers I could brew. We've done beers with Smut Labs. We're talking to Two Roads because we want to stay in our hometown, and our hometown can't support a giant brewery. So boat, BDG, ODub, the ones we don't really fool with the water, we kind of keep in house. But then we've got beers like Adipa and Hot Pun that are brewable recipes, and those are the ones we talk to other people about, working out if we can make them with them or not.
So you say you used to take a boat. So you're located like on the bay between Staten Island and Brooklyn, that area.
My house is if you know Jersey on a map, Jersey looks kind of like a guy's profile. The nose points towards Pennsylvania. The shoulder is the shore. The head is the cut-in for what's called the Raritan Bay. The very top of that is called Sandy Hook. Sandy Hook, New Jersey is a very thin natural peninsula that protects the Sandy Hook Bay. Atlantic Highlands, where the brewery is, about a mile from the house I'm talking to you from, is the town on that bay, where the town Sandy Hook protects. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's the boat that comes from New York and Jersey City goes to a dock about 6 blocks from the brewery and about 1.5 miles from my house.
So that means when I go to New York with my wife, I can tell her, oh, yeah, you go visit the museum. I have something else that I want to see it. I can just hop.
People do it. It makes for a very good trip. You can
meet at the end of the day.
If it's a Thursday night, you can jump on a 410 boat, be in Carton Brewing, drinking by 5, and get back on a I think it's 7:15 or 7:20 boat, and be back in Manhattan by 8 p.m. And having done no driving, walk 6 blocks. It's in the summer it's a different thing. Like you come down to the beach, you rent a bike, you pedal over to us, and you hang out on the ocean and do all that. But there's guys who've worked a quick Carton run into their night out in Manhattan on Thursday.
Now, I did a quick look at your beer. It seems that you guys are not riding a wave. It seems that you're doing a lot of different style. Is that something that you did consciously, or just happened organically? All the styles you perceive that the brewery.
Well, so I think it's again, not to beat the boat drum, but Carton Brewing is born of solving a problem for a beer that didn't really exist when we started. Right? If it was today, with beers like Go-To and Even Keel and anything Lawson does in the small world, we probably wouldn't have ever started the brewery. But 5 years ago, we needed this beer to exist, and it didn't. So we're born of creating something that doesn't exist. And that's what's intriguing, and that's what's fun. So that's a lot of what we're doing. We do things like, we did a beer called Cafe y Churro, which is it's our 12% coffee cream ale that we put vanilla and cinnamon in so that it would taste like a churro in a sweetened coffee. We used a sous vide machine out of my kitchen to infuse the vanilla and cinnamon in there so that it would have the appropriate scalded milk flavors without having to actually cook it. We do, we play around with wasabi and green apples. Our next beer up is a cherry blossom salted sour ale. And it's flavors of the world that turn me on, that I can envision as a beer experience, and then I just try to figure out how to make that work. And then there's the other side of the coin, which is we love drinking hoppy pails. So we make those too. You know what I mean? Like we still haven't bourbon barrel aged a stout because I think those exist well. And we fool around. Right now I'm working on a 4-ingredient stout with no adjuncting because I'm having trouble finding those. Every time I go to the store, I can get 90 kinds of stout, but I can't just get a clean 8% taste like 50 million things from 4-ingredient stout anymore. So we're going to go make literally the simplest beer in the world because people have stopped making it. And that's what we think our job is. You know, it's funny to say that and make beers like Adipa and Hop Pun and Red Rye, you know, but those are the beers we drink, so we got to make them too.
Yeah, it's what is interesting for me the first time I heard about your brewery, which surprisingly being around that long and such a good beer. I was so amazed by the beer I had today.
Oh, thank you.
Somehow I don't know how I missed you guys like that, but what caught my attention is that
we're very small. We only make 3,000 barrels a year.
Okay, because it's very rare to hear people raving about a cream ale. And all of a sudden, I hear about everybody talk about this cream ale. I was like, okay, I got to figure out what that is. And then, I think that's a good thing for craft beer when you have other styles being, looking after or sought after. That's a good thing, I think.
I don't know. I think you should make the beers you want to drink.
Right.
And so I get breweries that just make double IPAs because I love drinking double IPAs. But then I spent a lot of yesterday at Threes Brewing, which is another tiny little brewer like us. I think they're right around similar size. They gave me, I had a dozen beers while I was there. 2 of them were lagers. I had a really cool sour with some Sauvignon Blanc in it. Like there's, in our range, in our size, in that 3 to, let's imagine I know what I'm talking about and say 10,000 barrel size, I think you can fool around and be creative and do new stuff and really break new ground. And then I think there's the kind of, once you get past that, it doesn't matter because you're not going to send those beers far. Like your town and your neighbors will get to drink your weird little ideas, and you're going to be distributing your flagships, for lack of a better term, to the rest of the world. You know what I mean? And then there's another level where you get big enough, you can be like Founders or somebody, and then you can send out your little weird things too. But I think there's a bunch of us fooling around with just dopey styles. There's a great, perfect, traditional, no fucking around like I do. I'm sorry, you can curse on this?
Let her rip.
I didn't mean to. But not everybody fucks around. Newburgh Brewing makes a real pretty 5% traditional cream ale that I love drinking. So it's not just us. There's a lot of good guys out there. It's just you keep that stuff at home. You don't send it out because when you send it out, people that don't know you are like, why would these guys, like, why is this beer so sweet? And we're like, well, because it's supposed to taste like coffee with 2 sugars. And they're like, oh, now I get it. But if they're far away from Carton, they don't get that message. They just get a sweet beer and get mad at it for being sweet.
I guess I want to go all the way back to the beginning of this conversation,
Okay.
which seems like 15 minutes ago, but it was just
I tangent.
And that was the origins were you wanted to make a light beer, a light-bodied beer, a low ABV beer that had full flavors and really kind of delivered the hop presence and with malt balance and all that kind of stuff. But when you have a low ABV beer, there really is a challenge of balancing there. So the session IPAs to me are not. When I drink a session IPA from Oscar Blues Pinner, when I drink Go-To from Stone, when I drink, those beers are not meant to give you any kind of malt sweetness. I'm going to punch you with aromatics and high late addition bittering, and that's how this beer presents. Was that what you had in mind? Were you going back to me? A very near perfect beer is Zombie Dust from Three Floyds, and that is that maybe if they'd have made that later, they'd have called that a session IPA. But that's a pale ale that's dry hopped.
Too much wheat in Zombie Dust for me to
There's
be
too much wheat.
Pale ale. It's not bad, but it's not a pale ale. It's a wit beer with Chico yeast. You know what I mean? I like the beer, But keep in mind, sessioning is about sessioning a beer, right? You don't session beers. You session a beer. Nobody drinks 6 zombie dusts. The mouth feels a little too thick. The mouth feels a little too thick from the wheat. The hops I love the hops. They're gorgeous. I get it. It's like Gumball Head is another one like that.
Yeah.
Where they're fun, but they're just smaller ABV impression beers, right? They're meant to be super impressive. They can fit in a lineup of 8 different beers over a night of drinking. They're meant to blow your head off with hops. And this is going to sound pejorative, and I don't mean to be, but those hops don't evolve. They do their trick, and they stay right there. You know what I mean? They don't 8 zombie dust laters at 12 degrees higher. You're not getting a whole new nuance on that hop, right? So I don't disagree with what you're saying about that kind of thin, pronounced bitterness, but for me, that's long-term drinkability. If you're going to call a beer a session beer, you have to mean that if a guy went into a bar and that was the only tap that was on, he could drink it watching a band for 5 hours and still have it engage him when he needs it to. You know what I mean? I think the phrase I say is, it's got to be interesting enough to want to drink it, but not so interesting you're stopping to talk about it. That's a session beer. You know what I mean? And I like Go-To a lot, but Go-To is really bitter for a session IPA.
Very much so. And but so then.
But I like bitter doubles too. You know what I mean?
I guess I'm going to have to get some boat then, because I don't. Even though they call them session IPAs, I always thought that was a reflection of the alcohol volume. I could not drink 6 zombie dusts for the reason of the bittering, because that is, because of that. There's a truly beautiful beer. DC Brow makes one called The Public. I don't know.
Yeah, I've had it. It's really nice.
And it's bright, it's low ABV, it's all those kind of things that I say, is this a hoppy pale ale or a session IPA? They call it a hoppy pale ale. But I'm still not drinking I'm not sessioning that beer. If I'm going to session a beer, it's going to be a Kolsch. It's going to be something that isn't pounding me in the face with 75 IBUs.
Right, agreed.
So I guess.
But here's the problem: is I was drinking because my palate is so drawn to beers like Flower Power, which have 70 IBUs.
Yeah.
I was drinking 6 of them, and I was getting in a ton of trouble. An 8% beer, 6 of them, but you're sitting on a couch, it's on a tap. You refill 8 times,
right?
Then you get off that couch and you're like, fuck, I need a cab.
But see, for me, if it doesn't have a bitterness, if it's not 60 plus IBUs, almost doesn't feel like an IPA though. I wouldn't call it an IPA at all then.
Right. I agree with you. But we also live in a world where anything that smells like hops gets called IPA. And you're not wrong that a lot of beers that put session on it mean low gravity.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
But so I make a bunch of beers under 5%. Monkey Chase the Weasels, 3.9. I make a lot of beer. Like Digger was 3.8. Our next beer is somewhere down around 4. Only 2 of them do I call session beers, because only 2 of them are designed enough that I'm not thinking about what one does for you if you're only having one. I've designed them, the Milk Stout and Boat, they're meant to get interesting around 2 or 3, right? The first Boat should just stop you from being thirsty. It's probably very bitter. I mean, it is very bitter beer. But it's just meant to stop you from being thirsty, like a Miller Lite out of an ice bucket when you've been playing soccer when you're 21. You know what I mean? Like, you know how that's better at making you stop being thirsty than Gatorade? Well, I just got over that flavor. It just, you know what I mean? I just wanted more flavor in that experience. But that first one should just stop you from being thirsty, because you're going to drink it too fast, because you're thirsty, because it's your first beer of the night. But then your palate adjusts to that level of bitterness, and I believe if you've done the job of layering and nuancing and not bombing it out at one end and not the other and not doing all that, around your third or fourth, it's sitting there getting warm. You know what I mean? Like, you shouldn't have to put a signal on your can that the beer is too warm to drink. It should get pretty. It should change and it should evolve. And that's what we do with boat, and that's what we do with milk. The milk stout is a funny one where I want it to be interesting. I want to do all the things stouts do, but it's 4%. So we just picked all of the most abusively charred malts. Crazy, just, black patent and all those, and made a 4% beer out of it. And then instead of using the milk, the lactose sugar to sweeten it, we use it more like milk and coffee. So it's just taking the edges off that really bitter drink we made. And so it's a milk stout because we're Carton, carton of milk obviously had to happen. We didn't have many choices. But it ain't sweet. It's a bitter little beer. And when you first get it, it's dark chocolate, and it's baker's chocolate, and it's black coffee, and it's all those things. But as it warms and the lactose settles in a little and dulls that, it turns into, milk chocolate and all that. And as you have 7 or 8, it's evolved over all 7 or 8. It's not the same beer. Stay with me. I can hear you, as you know, but I'm gonna go fill my beer.
Do you have a missing person on the can for that milk? For that.
That would be cool to have like in the back.
We thought we'd get in trouble with that. I don't think we've tried it. But the can isn't official yet. The can is that can hasn't been made yet, so maybe someday.
You can do something like a husband went to buy cigarettes, never come back.
That's right. Right.
Now it's like I'd be dead.
You would be surprised what the government cares about on a can of beer.
What, that one guy? The TTV? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, no. Battle's gone.
Oh,
Battle retired.
Yeah.
But yeah, you'd be surprised. It's funny. We have I probably should never point this out to anybody, but we have a series of cans. So our double IPA is 077XX. 077XX is 077XX.
Oh, is that how you say it?
Yeah.
I just read here. I didn't know how to say it.
We just call it dub. So ODub. So it's because basically we made it 077XX. Everybody was calling it 007. Hi, Freddie. So everybody was calling it 007, so we started calling it 077 to kind of fix that mistake.
Yeah.
And then it became ODub, and then it just became dub.
Because people like abbreviations.
Yeah, so we just call it dub. But it's 077XX because all the zip codes in Monmouth County, New Jersey, where we're from, are 077 something something. Right? So we just made it XX. And then what we do is for the bars that committed to boat beer 5 years ago when a 4.2 really bitter little beer didn't make sense, we take a run of it every now and then and we do a third dry hopping with a specific hop that's named after that town. And then we name it after that town's zip code. So 07750 is the Monmouth Beach bar that we had our first keg of beer at. And it's the Nelson Savan third dry hopping of ODub. What's funny is we've now got 10 of those cans through TTB, and 4 of them are different because somebody had an issue with one of the words, but somebody else didn't have an issue with that word on 6 cans. So they don't even agree on what their own rules are. So it's very hard to figure out what you should be doing.
Since you start talking about your cans and what's on the can, I just opened your Cosmonaut.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and I mean it's delicious. I have to say this, and I see here that it's Imperial Stout with freeze-dried ice cream. And I don't know if you. I like that kind of thing. I don't know if our listeners know about this, but freeze-dry is when you go straight from solid to gas, and the ice cream became very famous because they're supposed to send on the Apollo shuttle, and never did. Like
it never went to space.
Yeah, they did. There's big propaganda over the ice cream and everything, but it never happened. But if you go to museums, you can buy those little freeze-dried package of stuff.
Just for the science nerds out there, when you go from solid to gas, it's called sublimation.
Sublimation.
But freeze-dried is when you take something and remove the water from it.
Right.
So, Gil was close.
What they do, they reduce the pressure so much, so it goes from solid to gas by sublimation. That's what it is. Right?
I don't think you guys had me on the show to complain about the government, but you will love this tale because of exactly what you were discussing. So the joke is, we were fooling around with Super Galena hops in Russian Imperial Stouts because I like that they have this kind of strawberry aroma to them if you throw them in around 30 minutes. And I wanted to make like a chocolatey Russian, because the Russian is the over-hopped stout. So I wanted to over-hop a stout and somehow get a strawberry aroma out of it. And make a chocolatey stout, no chocolate, but a chocolatey stout, and then overhop it. And a Russian Imperial seemed the thing to do with that. And then once we did it, I was like, oh, what would be fun is if we could put Neapolitan ice cream in this. And at the time, oh, Jesus, here's a whole nother story. I'm sorry, guys. But at the time, the milk stout we've already talked about, when we go to bars for dinners, tastings, they put a scoop of ice cream in the stout at the end because they'd be like, oh, we made a float. And that would always make me crazy because now you're not tasting my beer. Yeah. What you're tasting is ice cream. And who doesn't like ice cream? So complimenting my stout with a dollop of Haagen-Dazs in it doesn't mean I've done a good job. So what I was doing was I was pureeing freeze-dried ice cream and rimming the glass of the stout with that powder so that you'd have the ice cream flavor on the edge and it could be called a dessert without putting ice cream in the beer. And then simultaneously we're doing this Russian thing. I was like, if we put the Neapolitan ice cream in, it'll taste like strawberry, chocolate, and vanilla. It's basically, once you freeze dried it, you've destroyed all the fat in the ice cream through that process. So it'll ferment out like a sugar, so it'll be super dry. It won't be like over flavored. It'll just be aromatic and it'll be pretty. So we started doing that. So we put together the recipe, we brewed it, we loved it, we sent it to the TTB. And the flavorings in astronaut ice cream aren't approved for brewing. There's a list of what's approved for brewing. So then we needed to, they made us talk to the Chinese company that makes astronaut ice cream, get them to divulge their full recipe to us, which took us a year of convincing, so that we could tell them the parts per million of those ingredients in the ice cream. What's interesting here is the parts per million of the ice cream, the actual whole ice cream, isn't enough in the beer that these would be a problem, right? And they wanted to know the parts per million of this ingredient in the ice cream. So that took us a year and a half. And I literally had a conversation with one of the government people on the time. I was like, you guys know I know this stuff exists because you sold it to me at the Smithsonian when I was 6. And they're like, that doesn't matter, that's not us. I was like, but if it's not safe for 6-year-old Augie Carton on a class trip to the Smithsonian, why can't I just put it in the beer? Like, it's got to be okay, right? You've been feeding it to children since Apollo. Why can't I throw it in the beer? Like, that's not how it works. And
there's lots of things we fed 6-year-olds though 30 years ago that we
they
probably
still
shouldn't.
feed it. It hasn't come off the list. Still, go to the Smithsonian. I swear to you, we bought the ice cream for the beer from the Smithsonian.
I was in Texas. I was at the museum in Texas. They had some kind of presentation there, and I came back home with 3 packages of that thing.
Oh, it's fun. It's cool.
Among other,
there's now like mint chocolate chip ones too. Like, there's neat versions of it now. It's not always strawberry vanilla chocolate.
So if you can't get that approved, there's really no hope for a future hot dog beer. I guess because that's not food either.
People always ask me that one because we're New Jersey and one of our indigenous foods is called pork roll.
Yeah.
And I'm the food beer guy. So everybody wants me to make a pork roll beer, and I always think it's much more funny to back engineer the flavors of pork roll into beers that already exist. So do like a Flanders Red because of the umami and the ketchup and the richness, put a little smoke in it, and then and get all the flavors that make pork roll without actually needing to put all the fat and stuff in your beer. Because, I like the commonality of flavors and finding them where they exist without having to. Like, I like the strawberry from the Super Galena much more than I like putting strawberry in a beer. And then, but the thing is, one of I believe the secret ingredients in pork roll is saltpeter, and I don't believe you can add that to beer. So you keep getting hung up there.
For the secret ingredients.
Yeah, here in PA, I think they call it Taylor ham or something like that.
Yeah, that's the wrong name for it. You guys got to let that go. It's pork roll.
So I apologize for coming in late, Augie.
No, thanks for joining us, dude. Thanks for having me.
No, absolutely. Thank you. So I have a quick question because we're talking about the beers. For me, one beer that I had the pleasure to have some variants of in regular when I have reviewed some was regular coffee.
Right on.
And so I just wanted to ask about how I kind of know the brief history of regular coffee, but how did that come about, the idea for the cream ale, and then how did the variants kind of go from that? Because for me, the cream ale is a cream ale, and it's kind of like, you can't get too crazy with it until I had some of yours, and I'm like, okay, this is like a whole nother level of, especially with the ABV, the Imperial, like 12%, like, it's like I was like kind of blown away, and that's a pretty big jump, especially for something like,
Thank you.
Style.
Yeah, we like to fool around. So less so now. Nowadays, I think the big trend in stouts is kind of flavors of your youth, cinnamon and vanilla and stuff.
Yeah.
But when we opened, coffee and stout was a big thing, and this touches on what I was just saying. Not that I would never put coffee in a stout. I just don't think that's as magical as making a stout taste like coffee without any coffee, right? Like blending and finding your malts and finding your yeast and just making everything so that it, like a chocolate stout that tastes like chocolate with no chocolate, or a coffee stout that tastes like stout with no coffee, to me is a much more interesting thing, because when you put coffee in a stout, now it just tastes like coffee, and if you build a malt bill that tastes like coffee, it's still going to taste like chocolate and all the other things, right? And for me, that's what's kind of the magic of brewing. But they were the trend at the time, so a lot of conversations I had when are you going to make a coffee stout? And I said, I don't think I will. I'm not saying I won't, but I don't think I will. I'll make a coffee beer. Like, I'll make a coffee beer in a way that, that the coffee does something new. So we do a coffee IPA, and we do these coffee cream ales.
Right on.
And the joke, what made it make sense to me, what turned me on about it is, in New Jersey, and I think in Pennsylvania, definitely up in Massachusetts, when you order a regular coffee, they put milk and 2 sugars in it.
2 sugars, yeah, absolutely.
Right? I drink coffee black. But, you're exhausted, you're working, you're on your way, you stop at a deli, you get a pork roll, egg, and cheese, and you order a coffee. Give me a pork roll, egg, and cheese and a coffee. And they're like, how do you want the coffee? You're like, regular. And when I say that, I mean black with caffeine,
Yep.
right? That's what I mean. That's not what it means. I've lived in Jersey for 46 years. I need to know better, but sometimes I'm not thinking straight, and you're 5 miles down the road, and to quote Pesci, they fuck you at the drive-thru, and you sip your coffee, and it's light and sweet. And you're like, motherfucker, and I know it's my fault. I know I should know better. I know I've done it to myself. And I was like, that's the Jersey coffee. How do we make that a beer, right? And it's it's like coffee ice cream doesn't taste like coffee. It tastes like coffee, milk, 2 sugars, right? So that was what we were figuring out. And then, so the 12% is 12%. We originally made that beer at like 6 or 7%, but it wasn't rich enough, like coffee, milk, 2 sugars, because the milk is a richer thing than coffee. So up around 12%, it had that body, that mouthfeel, where it showed off the malts and the lacto we add to it. And then the two sugars joke was lactic and dextrose, lactose and dextrose. So those are two sugars. So we're sticking with the milk two sugars idea, and it ran away from there. But then again, go back in my rant 2 minutes, and you'll remember that I drink black coffee. So as much as I love regular coffee, I think we've pulled some proper craft brewing fuckery. I only drink about 10 of them a year because it's a sweet beer.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's what puts me in that kind of dessert thinking, right? So far we've done Irish and we've done Churro.
I was going to bring that up because when I had Cafe and Churro, I was like, it was really good, man. But my thing was that it does, like, again, I know regular coffee tastes like. Regular coffee tastes like you guys hit that with that. It tastes like a regular coffee. That you can actually get that out of the beer, which is pretty awesome. It's fun.
Thank you.
And then at 12%, it's even more fun.
Well, be careful. It's one at the end of dinner. It's not for you. I have shotgunned all of them because I believe that's my job as a New Jersey brewer. But those aren't meant to be drunk that way. Those are meant to be.
I got a very intricate now. I got to try it because I come from a country where churros is a big deal. So now I'm gonna have to sort that out.
Yeah, so good. That's really good.
Yeah, thank you. But yeah, so that's inspiration. If you've ever been down to Miami and you get a café con leche, that's sweet and it's scalded and it's all that, and you eat a churro with it. Well, regular coffee to me tastes much more like a café con leche than the coffee I regularly drink. So it just got me in that frame of mind, and that's why I was like, well, if we put cinnamon and vanilla in the coffee, it'll taste like you dipped a churro in the coffee. So then, like I said, we kind of reinvented brewing for that. The addition of the cinnamon vanilla happens. So the beer is finished. The yeast is cropped, and I took out 40 quarts of the raw beer. Each one of those quarts in like a little Tupperware thing got 2 vanilla beans and 3 cinnamon sticks, and then that went into a 140 degree sous vide water bath for 24 hours, so that we could kind of cook the flavors so that it would taste right without needing to. So if we put it in too early, it would just be cooked through the whole beer, and if we put it in too late, it'll just taste raw. So this was our workaround to make that work, and then that beer went back in, got moved over to the bright, and we canned from there. So that's Cafe Churro. What's funny is if you talk to other brewers who like cinnamon or vanilla beer, they talk about 90 pounds of vanilla, 90 pounds of cinnamon, and our little fool around with the sous vide, I don't think we use 2 pounds of either.
Wow, that's crazy.
Well, I want to kind of move us toward the end here, just because this has been good, but we want to respect your time, Augie.
Thank you.
I want to go back and I want to kind of summarize because Gil and Freddie and some of the other guys, Randy and Charles, who aren't here, we go to a lot of breweries and we drink a beer from a lot of different breweries because of our shows and our podcast here, and it doesn't take a long time for us to realize, is the brewery making beer that they want to make and they want to drink, and then waiting for the people to come find them, or are they making beer that they think is marketable and will build them up fast enough to sell out? And it's refreshing, and we want to focus our attention on folks like you who are very passionate about the beer. We interviewed Dave Engbers from Founders, and you can say what you want about what they've done with selling part off to a company, but everything that he said came back to it's about the liquid going into the bottle, and to me that is a mark of quality, is that it matters to you what the beer tastes like. If you're a marketing guy and a Wall Street guy, that you could lean back and say, you know what, we could use less ingredients and make this appeal to a larger market and sell 6,000 barrels instead of 3,000 barrels. Instead, you're like, screw this. I want to make beer that I want in my tap behind me in the living room, instead of and let the people come to that beer.
Right. Yeah, that's. But you got to remember, Carton has a weird liberty. we made a big decision. So we talked before about me working in the movie business, and this is going to sound all cynical and jaded, so you got to promise me we don't end on this.
Well, it's Hollywood, so you would be.
Well, that's the thing. I worked in movies because, I was born in 1970, and I'm part of that "you're a special snowflake" generation that Fight Club's all about. And I went into movies because they told me do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life. And that is the biggest bullshit I ever heard. I did what I loved, and I can barely go to the movies anymore. Like, it was freelance by nature. It was hard. I'd wake up in the middle of the night screaming that I'd gone into overtime and, the world was going to end. And there were great days, but when you do what you love and you need it for the money, you can resent it. So that's when I went to Wall Street and said, I'd rather do a job that ends when I go home, take the money I make there and do the things I love. So with Carton Brewing, we're only 3,000 barrels. But we have a staff of 12. Because the decision I made was I didn't ever want to make a beer because I had to. I want to make beers I want to. This is my creative outlet. So I kept my day job. And, I work on Wall Street about 50 hours a week, and I work at Carton about 40 hours a week. And it's a lot of work and it's too busy, but because, if we have health care for all our guys, if one of their kids needs braces, we'll figure out how to pay that for them. We're not going to have to go save money on the beer because something went wrong. Mm-hmm. Right? And I think that's a lot of mistakes we saw happen to the guys that faded in the 90s was they thought they'd get rich. I mean, one of my favorite jokes is the way to make a small fortune in brewing is to start with a big one.
Yeah. I've heard that today, actually, from the guys. A guy, John, he's the head brewer from San Boniface. He actually said that same thing to me today.
It's a simple truth. But I've got a team of 5 people I brew with. I really enjoy each of them. We're kind of like a jam band. Everybody has their strengths and their weaknesses. I conceptualize with some guys. I, execute with other guys. I engineer with other guys. And that lets me keep my job. And if I have my job, then we get to make whatever the fuck we want. We don't need to double down on ODub and make a ton of it to pay the bills. We make ODub because we like drinking ODub. And we make Cafe Churro because we wanted to make that beer and see if we could do it. Yeah. And I'm super proud of having done that. It's nice when it works out. We've made beers that piss people off too. And that's fine with me because that's what I get to do, right? It's as long as I love it, we did it right. And, it finds its audience, and we're these little guys in Jersey, and that's a liberty we have. But if you quit your job, if you go all in, if you need that brewery to, if your kid gets sick and the brewery's paying for it, you got to save money. And we want to, we make a truffle beer. We make a beer with white truffles, overnight from Alba, Italy. It sells. It doesn't make us any money, but it doesn't lose us any money. But the first time you write the check for, 2 kilos of white truffles overnighted from Italy, that's tough to do if you're a small startup business that, needs to. So we have a liberty not a lot of guys have, which we enjoy, and we try to be good to that liberty we've built. But yeah, it's thank you for appreciating it, but it's by design. Like I said, I never want to have to do this. I want to do it because I love doing it. And so I kept the day job that I have to do, but it lets me come up with, our next 2 beers, the world's going to hate. We're literally doing a 3.8% salted sour beer with cherry blossoms in it. We're going to get literally 50% of the people that get it are going to get mad it doesn't taste like Robitussin. Because it says cherry on the can, but it doesn't taste like Robitussin, so I fucked that up. Then the next beer after that is a smoked small porter with garlic powder in it that we call Rub, which is the chocolate, coffee, cayenne, black pepper, garlic powder, onion powder, kosher salt rub I put on ribs.
say, like smoking a rib or something.
in a porter.
Just
in a
send
smoked
everything
porter.
you don't sell to me. I'll drink it.
No, we'll sell it all. But we're gonna sell it to people that think they're buying, more O-Dub, and they're gonna get mad about it. And I'll deal with that on social media like I always do, and that'll be fun and fine, and we'll move on and we'll go do a next one, and it'll be whatever we want to do.
Right on.
Well, we were gonna move to the lightning round, and you took us there, and that is, what are the next beers? And the answer is 2 beers that people are gonna hate, but you're
Some
gonna
people
sell all
are
of
gonna
them.
hate. Some people are gonna hate. Some people love them. The
But
nice
there's a
part
lot
is
of hate there's a lot of hate on the internet, no matter what. Like here's
I
$50.
love the internet.
I can't believe you didn't give me $52. You cheap son of a bitch.
When is that beer coming out? I'll drive down when you.
The cherry blossom one or the
Cherry
or the
blossom
garlic?
No. The rub.
Rub is August. It'll be in August.
I'll be in August. I'll be in Carton Brewing drinking the rub.
What kind of special events are you guys having? Do you do stuff at the brewery other than cornhole and everything that ever?
We don't do any of that.
All right.
We're dead center of our hometown. We're across the street from the elementary school. So our tasting room is a tasting room. We want to have you in. We want to share our beers with you in 4-ounce tastes. We want you to get to know us, and we want to get to know you. But we want you to go do your drinking somewhere else. It's just the nature of being in the middle of a town and being a good neighbor. We give you, for $5, you get 6 4-ounce tasters, and we always have a hand pump. You can get. I figured nobody's gonna get themselves wasted on real ale, so we'll give you a mug of that. And that's about it. And then we're on the main street of a very cool shore town, so there's 8 or 9 good restaurants, some of which you can bring our beer to and have dinner, some of which are proper bars with great tap lists. So go do your drinking there. We're a tasting room. We're there to answer your questions and tell you what we do and learn what you think.
Are you pulling handles at any festivals then this summer that are coming up?
I'm sorry to say no. We are really too small and oversubscribed. God, this just sounds terrible, but we're not looking for more new business till we can grow. Everything we make, we sell. It's a nice community. People get it. Now that we can, it gets shared farther than our ability. But yeah, it's
Do you when we come to the tasting room, can we buy cans out the front door, or do you not have?
When we have them, yeah. When we have them, we do growler fills, and we fill anybody's growler. People always ask that. We have a sticker that is our federally New Jersey approved growler label on a paper sticker. So bring anybody's growler. We slap that sticker on. It's literally a paper sticker. You get back in your car.
That's the thing about pregnant people don't drink and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, all that stuff. It's all on there, but it's the carton branding for the liquid that's in the bottle, which New Jersey thinks matters at the federal level. It's basically a federal law. Jersey's decided matters.
All right.
So when you leave our brewery, no matter what growler you walked out in with, you're walking out with one with a carton label on it.
Yeah.
But you can pull it right off in your car, and unless you really like it, it's that's how we get you out the door. And when we have cans, we sell. We're now to the point where we're comfortable selling about a case of each style per person. We were 2 4-packs for the first couple of years, but now
did you guys do Shipwrecked like that? Was it Shipwreck? I have Shipwreck.
Shipwreck we do for anything I think would be neat to wait on.
Yep.
We basically counter pressure fill a 32-ounce growler, cap it and wax it.
Yeah.
But we only do 200 cases of those. And then, so my thinking is, if you love Shipwreck, come into the brewery, buy a growler of Shipwreck, take it home and drink it. But if you're a guy who's like, I wonder how this thing ages, you can buy one of those wax capped growlers, and that way, it's a multi-use. You can come back and fill that growler, or you can bring it to another brewery. So we're not just wasting glass.
Yeah,
but that way, there's one to throw in your cellar, because it's fun to age beers like that. Our saisons, we do that too. Anything we think it'll be fun to age that we're not going to can.
That's the one that's 42 SRM? That's a pretty dark.
That's not a real number. That's a joke.
Yeah, I was like
people
as
get
far
that
as
joke.
I know, 40 is as far as I remember.
No, it's so. Do you know how what SRM is? SRM is one of those ones. So the thing about beer is it's so old. It's got some of the original science. Like the first sciences were done to beer. Like pasteurization isn't a milk thing; it's a beer thing. Like people were trying to make beer better as long as there's been science. But SRM, standard reference measure, literally, there's not a thing in the world that isn't a standard reference measure. Somehow beer owns it for SRM. But what it is a box and some pieces of opaque glass, right? So this is originally, right? Now you do it with math. But you hold your beer up to the light. You guys can still hear me, right? That coaster dropped on the
That was pretty awesome. Yeah.
So you hold your beer up to the light. You hold the glass with one chip up to the light. They don't match, you throw another glass in. If you had 4 pieces of glass when they matched, you're at 4 SRM. So at some really low number, like 10 or 12, you're opaque, right? You're just see-through.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So you're non-see-through. So there is no real SRM higher than that. But in the arms race of extreme beer of circa 2012, there were people reporting these ridiculous SRMs because that's the math. But the 42 joke is the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy joke.
Absolutely.
Oh, the answer for
It's
yeah.
the answer for everything.
Mhm.
So the minute a beer goes see-through a carton, it gets a 42 tacked on it. I mean, non-see-through a carton, it gets a 42 tacked on it. That's that joke.
Little Douglas Adams, go get the book. If you have not read it, it's one of those that everyone has to read in their lifetimes.
It's a must-read book.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, let's wrap this thing. We know about them. We know they're small, but we know that they're passionate. They're in New Jersey, and boy, I don't know how, Freddie, you must have traded for it to get this beer to then.
Did we
ship
send
out.
it to you, Freddie, or did you?
No. You guys shipped it to me, and in a state that I'm not going to mention over the
Thank you. Please don't.
Freddie drove to the New Jersey border to get a beer. So thank you, Freddie.
Handshake deal with Sloan Dog.
The shipwreck porter I have. Oh, it says porter, right? I believe so.
Yeah.
Shipwreck.
Shipwreck porter, yeah.
Yeah. A couple years ago when I bought the house, it was here. Yeah, that was the answer.
Thank you,
Matt.
Well, thank you,
Yeah.
Augie. Thank you, Augie, for your time, your information, and your passion for absolutely everything there is to do about beer, and your part of New Jersey and all those other kind of things. So until next week, I don't know who next week's guest is because I'm a sub-host.
We're on vacation. 4 weeks.
We're on vacation.
Finally.
So we will be recording probably a pint session,
Pint session
a
during that time.
podcast-only show. And then, but you can check out Augie's Brewery in New Jersey. You can also check out their Steal This Beer podcast.
We do that too.
Excellent.
Yeah.
As you can tell from me rambling your whole show, I apologize.
No, that's all right. That's why we brought you on, was to ramble.
That's actually a pretty good podcast, so it's worth.
People are tired of us rambling on Fridays, so we bring in people to ramble on Thursdays. So, I really appreciate your time, and until next week, or until, I don't know, next month or whenever the heck we do something else, find some good beer, find some great friends, and mind those P's and Q's.
Thank you, guys. Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers. Cheers.
All right.